My faithful audience, today I shall tell you a tale. But first, let me tell you of monsters. Oh no, I'm not talking about the abominations lurking outside the walls of this very flying city, nor even the eldritch abominations wandering the beyond. I shall tell you of that which exists solely beneath the children's beds. That which hides within the closet. These creatures are known to be beheld, for no adult is there to remember them. Indeed, questionable it is as to whether they exist, for they might as well be merely an expression of imagination. But the question remains about the nature of theirs, the only thing that appears truly consistent within their imagining. Why are they only there where a child feels safest? For where does the child hide when the parents once anew argue? When the brother comes to play his favorite wrestling game? When the sister decides to lock them up? But enough of my ramblings. To the tale itself. Once there was, in a rather remote little village. She dwelt with her father. Her father, the villagers told her, was quite the admirable man. An adventurer by heart. He brought back home many wondrous things. Often he would show her such within his laboratory, with shining daggers, the twisted dead things, and of course the circles that he drew. For she, his little daughter, appeared to prefer the library to his laboratory, reading of tales of great heroics, hard struggles, tears, and victory. She led a good life, she decided, even if father was often away, and even after mother died, he would always smile and muss up her hair. However, after one winter, upon his return, the stench was one of sour. They once only kissed on the forehead for a good night and a goodbye for his travels. He now returned home to kiss her on the lips, and when she showed only pain and fear, he threw her against the wall. She had trouble breathing, her arm dislocated. Thus her father called one of his old friends to make her good as new. Upon the inquiry of the old man that took care of her, of how she had suffered the injury, she only replied she had fallen down a flight of stairs. She was now no longer able to enjoy the tales that had inspired her. But she held fast to the thought that, no matter how many dragons, beasts, and creatures of the dark there lurked, always was there a shining knight, a wily sorcerer, or just a young man to make things right. Her father again went to travel, and again, at the cusp of winter, he returned, with many fantastic things, the child's guard told her. He would show her all the beautiful finery and items he had gathered just the next day. And indeed, the next day, with the snow falling again, they both went outside and played. It was like earlier, before mother had died, she thought. He gathered her up in his arms and began to kiss her. But as his tongue entered her mouth, she only tasted the disgusting sour, making her spit and vomit. In rage, the father again threw her against the wall, before beating her and kicking her in the side. She heard as her father dragged her back to her cell, ordering her guard not to open the door until morn again. But by that time she had already passed out, fallen asleep with her pain. In her dreams, however, she fled to her stories. She imagined the knight again, the one of whom she had wept, the one who stood for the right, without question or pause. the one who is willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. Only in her dreams, this knight was different. Black was his plate, and his horse was the darkest shade of midnight, with fire and smoke trailing from its nostrils. With this knight she rode, grabbing the horse's blazing mane, feeling the cold steel of his armor on her legs. She felt his breath upon her back, and then she heard the deep rumbling of a horse underneath her bed. She screamed in terror, the knight staring down at her before he dissolved like all dreams do. The horse's pounding hoofs gave way to the pounding of a guard upon her door, demanding that she be silent, for her father had had a hard day and needed sleep himself. Thus it went on, the father again being absent and she left her dreams. Only now that she had tasted the salty and the melt, she knew that the night would always keep the dreams away. Up until again her father kissed her in his chambers, hiked the shift above her head, only to stop when he saw her crying, disgusted and enraged, again beating her with the anger of one denied. Again her father took her back to his chambers, but she had already fallen asleep to the pain. In her dreams, the bruises remained, but the pain was gone. And the knight was there, sitting on a stone, sharpening his blade. His horse, lying on the side, watching her as she picked flowers. But when the knight looked up from his work to the plants she had gathered, he stood up and clutched her to his chest. On foot, the knight took her deeper into the clearing, into a twisted forest, with the trees' wooden limbs bloated with bloody sap, as the faces had grown out and into the twisted
User
things.
entered your channel.
She could hear the trees rustling, or perhaps they said something. The faces she saw now, twisted in expressions of torment and sadness, crying tears of sap as foam escaped the gaping bark mouths. The knight looked towards her, his helm dipping, as he took her to a small spring. As she hiked up a shift, he looked away, modest like a good knight, simply staying as a silent guard as she splashed and played within the water. It had the taste of the melt and the bitter, but when she again emerged and put her rough-spun clothes back on, the bruises were gone. The knight's helm turned towards her, and he hugged her to his chest again. Then came the deep breathing, the bellows, and the monster took her away from the night and back to the morning. Soon, she heard. Soon. The next day came, and her father decreed a feast to be held in his daughter's honor, just between him and her. He had her garbed in fine cloth, silk and finery of velvet, before she took her seat with him at the dinner table. Once all of her food was brought, father had the servants go away, and asked her to sit on his lap. He began to feed her from his plate, sweetly placing food on his fork, then on his fingers. He had her drink from his cup, and she began to feel warm and safe against him, knowing he would never hurt her. She was a good daughter, and that time was done. He even said so himself. She began to become sleepy, and father gathered her in his arms, taking her up the great stairs. Her head was spinning as he walked her through the library and laboratory, humming a cradle song and telling her that father loved her. But as she averted her gaze, just for a moment, there, behind a few boxes, half hidden from gaze, the knight stood, like a statue, his black plate gleaming. She felt the soft pelts, the warm down bedding, and her father began to help her get ready for bed. She wondered where her shift was, or did father get her a new one for a special night? There was no shift, and she felt her father begin to kiss her, first on the forehead, then on her chin, her lips, her neck. She wanted to open her eyes wide, to cry, but she couldn't. She was so tired. The wine was in her, warming her. Through her slit eyes, she saw father moving, huffing, down to his small clothes and breathing onto her, into her face, sour and sickly. Heavier, heavier breathing, hot, burning where it touched. Stop! That voice, so loud, rasping, screeching against her skull. She felt father leaving her, away from her, and hearing something. Wet, grisly, the fear of rain on her cheeks, the sound of metal scraping, whimpering. Father saying that he would never, that he was lonely, that this was true love, pure and holy. You do not know solitude, Warlock. You took my love. I will not allow you to take hers. But it was love, father insisted. Simple love. The bellowing began to change, sounding like laughter, the sound of crunching, sucking hooves and mud. Then the night touched her hand, and she felt less sleepy. She looked at him, towering, the smell of burning and salt and bitter. Pinpoints of light shone from his helm, and his armor dripped with wet. For the first time, she saw what he was. A knight who had done bad, who had fallen, but nonetheless came to protect her. Did you come to save me? Is the monster gone? Yes. She woke when the night touched her face. It was dawn, morning breaking through the glass of her father's bedchamber. Her father must have gone to breakfast, as he was nowhere to be seen. She stood and tripped on the gown she was in. It was odd, soft, and bore a coat of arms upon it. A great black steed with flames in its mouth. A scary thing, but father must have played a trick. She walked into the lab, past her father's latest acquisitions. As she passed, she heard a whisper, and turned to look. Just a suit of plate armor, shining bright, the armor of a true knight and hero.